let's hop into it. So we opened Incandescent Soulstoke, Elemental Rare, which is a great base to any elemental deck because it could put elementals from our hand into play for free, which is basically evoking them for 2 mana. So it's not actually entirely for free, but it's a nice discount compared to their evoke costs. And it's great with all the elementals because they have great come into play abilities like Muldrifter, which is right below it, which is great in any blue deck. And definitely elemental decks. There's also Giant Harbinger, which is great in any giant deck. You can find Thundercloud Elemental, which is really important. In goblins, we have Tar Pitcher, which is great for sacrificing goblins and triggering their abilities like Mud Button, Torch Runner. So the best card here is Muldrifter, and it's really the only great blue card. So I'm going to take this, pass all that red along, let them fight for it. So here we have Sentinels of Glenelendra, that's a great fairy. We also have Smoke Braider in elementals. That's great with our Muldrifter. It would have been awesome if we could have taken that Soulstoke, but I think that Muldrifter is just better overall. Might even be better in elementals because it's just such a powerful card. So I'm going to take the Smoke Braider and look to go into some sort of blue-red elemental deck. And Sentinels of Glenelendra is not so high-end that I feel bad about passing it. There's also some green coming along. Jagged Scar Archers, Guiltleaf Ambush, Nath's Elite. Maybe we can put someone into green. And of course there's a Neck Snap we got to keep in mind. There's also this Hearthcage Giant, which is really powerful, really big card. But Smoke Braider is what I want. So we have an elemental card in Fault Grinder. We have a Great Elf in Ren's Run Vanquisher. We also have a Pestermite in blue in fairies, along with Thieving Sprite. In elves, there's also Leaf Gilder. So there's some green coming along. There's some blue and black. I think the pick here is Pestermite. Take that. It's good with Muldrifter. I can get into fairies, and I can't really expect a table Thieving Sprite, but it is some indication that we can get a fairy deck. And right here is Dream Spoiler, which is one of my favorite fairies. It's really great. It goes well with Pestermite, anything we can play on their turn. So I will pick that up. And no great elves here. There is a very good Treefolk and Battlewand Oak. But it looks like fairies is a fine spot to be right now. Here we have another Smoke Braider. Also a Changeling Berserker in red. It's a changeling, so it is a elemental. I think the pick here is Smoke Braider. There's really no fairy for me, so Smoke Braider leaves me open to elementals. Guiltleaf Seer, very solid elf. Soulbright Flamekin and elementals. Also Rebellion of the Flamekin, which is great when you're clashing a lot. And Zephyrnet turns a creature into a defender. Is not a card to be completely overlooked because there's not a ton of removal in this format. But I will take the elemental in the Flamekin. It can generate mana, help you jump up from 6 to 8. And it can also help us trample over, so it's not a bad card. It's also just a 2-drop, which is the main appeal. So we'll have to see where the packs take us from here. So there's a fairy in Sentinels of Glenelendra. Solid blue card. I'll happily take that. There's another elf, Lissalana Scarblade. Kithkin Sends Air. Giant, Stink Drinker, Daredevil. There's definitely some decent giants that have been going around. Elves we haven't seen too great of yet. I'll just take the Sentinels for this stack though. And here we have a decent elemental in Mournwelk. And we have Marrow Harbinger. It's the best blue card in the pack. I feel as though I should just take that. I'm not really seeing us doing much with these other ones. But at the same time, I don't know if Marrow Harbinger is going to do much. I suppose I can just take Mournwelk and keep the elementals in my deck and maybe put these Smoke Braiders to good effect. None of these cards are really going to make the cut for my deck, but I can take Blind Spot Giant out. So it looks like blue-red elementals, maybe with some just decent fairies in it, because they're solid cards, is the most likely deck. We're not seeing a lot of black fairies. There's another Sentinel, so I'll definitely take that. Looks like blue is a fine place for us to be. There's a Broken Ambitions that goes well with our Flash theme. So we have something coming together here. I'm not sure we're really going to see... So here's a Fairy Trickery. I'll take that. Good counterspell. I'm not sure we're going to really see elementals or great red cards this next pack. So I think maybe we want to just focus on being a heavy blue deck and then picking up the black fairies that we can. Especially next pack. I'll take Captivating Glance. I'll take Protective Bubble. Not going to use it. Here's a Ring Skipper. It's a fairy. And when it dies, sometimes you get it back. So it's not a terrible card. Could make the deck. Especially with Spell Stutter Sprite. So we have a really nice elemental in Nova Chaser. And then in fairies we have Pepper Smoke. I think I should stick to the idea that elementals are not going to come around, and I should pick up Pepper Smoke and really cement myself into fairies and just let the elementals go. And Nova Chaser is definitely a good card, but it's passable. So I'll take Pepper Smoke. Here we have Eyeblight's Ending. That's a great black card. Destroy target non-elf creature. It really takes out a lot of things, and removal's hard to come by. So I'm happy to pick that up. There's also a Ponder, which I would play if it can come back around. And there's a Thundercloud Shaman we need to keep in mind. And hopefully we can just contain that with our counter spells. So I'm going to take these elementals out. Take this Mournwelk out. And we'll just see how this deck looks. This is not a bad start. So we're looking to pick up mostly cheap creatures to fill in our curve. And all the disruption we can get. We're just about halfway there in terms of playable, so we're not too far off. Here's Cloud Thresher. That's a nasty card. It's hate against fairies, that's for sure. Could consider taking that. The thing is, there's really nothing we're going to play in fairies in this pack. And I think I should just take the Cloud Thresher. It's also an elemental. Elementals, I think, are off the table, but that's something to keep in mind. There's also the Flamekin Blade Whirl. I could take that if I want to get into elementals with the Smoke Braider, but I'll take the Cloud Thresher out of the draft, put that in the board, and move on. So there's another elemental in Glare Wielder. That would have been great to pick up if I went the elemental route. There's also Fairy Trickery, and I'm just going to pick that. It's not too bad to have counter spells. And Nightshade Stinger is not really what I want. So here there's Turtle Shell Changeling. It's just a great creature. It is actually a fairy. And I'll take that. Here we have one of the best fairies, Marsh Flitter. I'm surprised to see this so late. And I will happily pick that up. Here's Familiar's Ruse, a counterspell that I can return creature like Muldrifter or Marsh Flitter to my hand to reuse it. I'll just pick that up. And there's Spell Stutter Sprite. That's perfect. Exactly what I'm looking for. Fill in the curve. And I don't really need more counterspells, but Broken Ambitions is the best card for me here. I don't really want any of the other options. There's Ponder. Happily take that tabled. Now I'm going into the third pack with a nice base, and hopefully I can get a lot of playables and trim a few of the more suspect cards in my deck. But even if I don't and I just get a few playables, I'll be able to have a pretty reasonable deck together. I'll take the Foot Bottom Feast just for my sideboard. Could be good against a deck with a lot of creature removal, where I'm going to run out of threats. I have some pretty decent cards to return, like Muldrifter and Marsh Flitter. Even Spell Stutter Sprite. They all create value. So here that Nightshade Stinger came around. I'll take that. Could play it for sure. And here's some unplayable cards for me in my colors. I'll take this Aquatex Will out. Some more. Alright. So we have Final Revels, which is awesome. It's a pump spell for us to finish the game, or it's a Pyroclasm to take out creatures. Hopefully our opponent's creatures more so than ours. So that I think that's going to be the pick here. There's also Thieving Sprite, which is great, and Fairies and Spell Stutter Sprite. Hopefully one of those will just come around for us. So I'm going to take the Final Revels. It's too powerful to pass up. And it actually goes really well with Marsh Flitter, which we have an opportunity to get a second one here. I think I should pick that up. There is, however, a Nameless Inversion, which I'm loath to pass. It's such a good card. There's not a lot of removal in this format, and not in my deck. And I would love to have Nameless Inversion. That said, Marsh Flitter is a nasty card. And it goes well with my deck. But I don't really have early plays in my deck. I don't have too many creatures. I do have a lot of 4s. I think I have to just take Nameless Inversion here. And then hopefully that Thieving Sprite will come back. And hey, maybe in the perfect world, Marsh Flitter will come back. So I'm taking Nameless Inversion, and I feel pretty good about it. Here we have Fairy Harbinger, which we can use to search up that Nameless Inversion. Or Marsh Flitter. There's also Dream Spoiler, which is just pure action and just a great card. I think I want to take that. Fairy Harbinger, while a great card, It's just a 2/2. Dream Spoiler Witches is a threat that they must deal with or it will take their board down, and I have a lot of instants in my deck. That Nameless Inversion I just picked up, those Sentinels, a bunch of counter spells. I think that the Dream Spoiler Witch is exactly what I need. So I will take that. And then to go with that, Pepper Smoke, another instant. So awesome. That looks great. And then, hey, here's a Secluded Glen. This is making me actually crack a big smile. This feels great. I'm looking down at 22 playables, and now I'll just pick up a land. Very cool. And wow, a Glare Wielder again. So some good elementals. We could have put together a pretty good elemental deck, I think. But I like the looks of this fairy deck. And this Secluded Glen is more good news. So I'll pick that up, and there's a Spellstutter Sprite. Perfect. Right in there in the curve, and helps enable our Pepper Smoke. Great with Dream Spoiler Witches. It's awesome. Here is Zephyrnet. Could take down a really big threat, and then we could just fly through it. There's also Deep Tread Marrow, which is pretty decent against blue decks. It's also a 2-mana play if I want one. I think I should just take that and put it in my sideboard and bring it in against blue. I'm going to play this Ring Skipper just as a creature. I think this Familiar's Ruse can go. I don't really like returning my creatures in my hand. Obviously, I have some good ones to return, possibly, but really that's a downside of Familiar's Ruse. It's not reliable as a counterspell. I think I'd rather have Fairy Trickery and Broken Ambitions in those slots. So I'm going to cut that. Nightshade Stinger is not impressive, but it's pretty good with Pepper Smoke. It's good with Spellstutter Sprite. I think that's a card I actually do want to include. So here's Silvergill Dowser. It's a merfolk, but its ability works for fairies. It counts the number of merfolk and or fairies that you control. So at the worst, it'll shrink by 1 because of its own merfolk status, and it could even shrink more with my other fairies. There's also this Fairy Tauntings, which whenever I cast a spell on an opponent's turn, they lose a life. That card can be useful, but at the same time, it's kind of a waste of mana. It takes a lot of spells to get your value. I'm just going to take the Dowser. That could actually help my deck establish control. And then here's Thieving Sprite. That goes right in the deck. Thieving Sprite number 2. That goes right in the deck. That's great. Here's a Fairy Trickery. I can just put that probably in the sideboard. Here's another Broken Ambitions. So yeah, I do have a lot of counter spells to work with. I'll probably cut most of those. I want to keep my creature count as high as possible. I'll take this Blind Spot out of circulation. I'll take another Foil Plains. I do want that Stinger. It also works with Thieving Sprite. I do like Silvergill Dowser, but it could possibly be cut. I definitely want to counter some spells, but I have too many in the deck. I'll start by cutting a Trickery and an Ambitions. I'm fine playing 17 land in this deck, but I do need some more cuts. I think going down to just a couple of counter spells is fine. And I want to keep this Ring Skipper just to keep my fairy count high, and also to give me another creature to have with Pepper Smoke. I'd like to play Dowser. I'd like to play this Changeling. So I'm just going to cut... I'm actually just going to cut the Trickeries and play 2 Broken Ambitions. That way I can split the difference on my mana. I'm just going to play 8/8 with the Secluded Glen. Maybe I'm a little bit light. Maybe I can use the 18th, but my curve ends really at 4. Muldrifter I can evoke for 3. I have a Ponder. I have a couple Pepper Smokes to cycle. And I can't really afford to get flooded because this is a synergy sort of format, synergy sort of deck. Too many lands is a bad thing. So I'll just do 17. All of these cards keep my creature count high. Minimal counter spells. If I had a Fairy Harbinger, I'd probably want to play a Fairy Trickery to tutor for. But this looks pretty good. And there's nothing in the sideboard that I want, so I'm going to submit this. Thank you for watching, and please join me for round 1.